My son's name is Jason Matthew. So, what I remember about my son was that we went in the day before New Year's Eve, and it was warm, very, very warm. And I remember about him was his jawline, very, very strong jawline, and I knew he was going to look just like his dad.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Larileah, thank you so much for coming, and we are so excited to hear about your little son, Jason. I know that this is not a fun thing to necessarily talk about, but we're excited to hear about him, and so thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Larileah, just as a little point of reference for everybody here, we are recording kind of August-ish, and I wanted to kind of let everybody know that we are. How long ago was Jason born? Kind of in relation to the time that we're recording right now.
Jason was born December 31st of 2001.
So very, very recently, you guys. I can't imagine. I just want to put in your mind that she's recording 8 months, essentially 8 months, 9 months after he was born. So, well, and tell us a little bit about yourself, Larileah. Tell me about who you are and where you guys are kind of generally located, and what your family looks like right now.
Okay, so I'll start with myself. I started out as a single mom. At the time, I had a 7-year-old, and we reside in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I met my partner, Jason's dad,
Mm-hmm.
at the same workplace. So we worked together.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And then in 2020, we had our daughter, Allison. 8 months after that, we found out we were pregnant with Jason.
Oh, was that a bit of a surprise?
Yes, it was very much of a surprise because it was 2 weeks after my grandmother passed away that we found out we were pregnant.
Oh.
So it was kind of like a blessing in disguise because she always said we need more boys. So I was always like, oh, that's her. Thanks, Graham. I love you.
That is so
Yeah.
great. Yeah, you're just like, yep, this is the way it goes. So, so you had Allison and your daughter, and then you guys kind of. So obviously it was a surprise. Did you guys want to have kind of more kids eventually, or was that just kind of you were like, we're good with our 7-year-old and Allison?
Well, when he came into our lives, my daughter was 7, my oldest, Liliana,
Mm-hmm.
from a previous relationship. So she kind of took onto him like glue because her relationship with her father wasn't best. So we really never had the idea of having any more children. We were basically content. He was content with a stepdaughter. I was content with my one child. And then just so found out right after her birthday, when she turned 9, that she was having a sister. So
Was she ecstatic? I'm sure she was like so excited.
she wanted a sibling for a very long time.
That is great. A couple of other questions that I have for you and who your family is. So what do you guys like to do in your spare time? What does your landscape look like? I realize that we are in the middle or at the tail end of the COVID-19 pandemic, but what do you guys like to do in your spare time?
Before COVID, we like to go to the park,
Mm.
especially take the kids to the park, enjoy the outdoors. But with COVID, we are enjoying our family movie nights,
Oh, fun.
our family game nights. So we're just enjoying a lot of time in right now until, COVID really does settle down.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm just very not okay with my 2-year-old being out in public, unvaccinated and all that fun stuff. So
Yeah. Like those
yeah,
littles, you got to protect, like, got to take care of
we
those.
have to protect the little ones.
Yep, we
Mhm.
do. Well, okay, that sounds good. So your pregnancy with Jason was completely a surprise, obviously. But were
Mhm.
you guys excited also?
Yes, very much excited. We were excited to the point like I was having a lot of grief going on, especially with my grandmother.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel for us.
Mm.
His family, our family, we were beyond excited without knowing the gender. Like just expanding the family is what we were excited about. And then when we found out it was a boy, everybody, including myself, was like jumping up and down, excited because I cried. I thought I was never going to have a son.
Oh,
Never.
yeah.
So when I found out it was a boy, I was like, yep, finally.
Thanks, Grandma.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it sounds like is a lot of your family right there in that same area where you guys live then?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
awesome. Okay, so then you found out that you were pregnant. Do you know how far along you were when you found out? Was it just kind of a regular like, oh, I missed my period. What's going on?
Um, I had a positive pregnancy test around 5 weeks, 6 days.
Okay. So kind of shortly after then,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. That's exciting. And then so did you just go into did you
Yeah.
go get some you had some doctor's appointments to kind of check up on things? How was everything looking okay? How did those appointments
No,
go?
it was
Oh
the
no.
rocky start to the pregnancy.
Wait, what happened?
Um, so they do like the initial blood draws and
Mhm.
everything like that. My A1C was elevated.
Oh.
So at literally 7 weeks, I had to go in and have a glucose tolerance test for 1 hour. I failed it.
Oh, okay. So everybody, just to let you know, the glucose tolerance test, if you don't know this, it's usually a bit later, like going in at
Yeah.
7 weeks to do some.
20 between 26 and 28 weeks is when you
Yeah.
normally have it.
So this was quite a bit earlier because the A1C was kind of showing up higher.
Yeah.
Had you ever had your A1C tested, or was that something that just kind of showed up on the radar this go around?
Yeah, I mean, I've always get it monitored and it's always normal. I
Okay.
don't know if it's because I was going through the stress of grief with my grandmother and dealing with all of that because your body reacts to sadness.
Hmm.
But then you know everything started to regulate because I went through the 3 hour test. This guys, I don't recommend it. Don't recommend it.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I passed that one. So everything started to level out.
Okay.
Everything was becoming really normal.
Okay. So that was the rocky start. Um,
Yes.
how was he? And did you guys like have an early ultrasound or anything like that to make sure he was doing okay? Or was it just kind of like, oh, we're just doing our basic, making sure everything's good
It was just
labs?
a normal routine, supervision of a normal pregnancy.
Okay.
It wasn't listed high risk or anything. Um, Never had an early ultrasound. We did have a dating scan, which was
Mm,
around 10 weeks, just
okay.
so we can opt for genetic testing, and all that fun stuff. But it was normal, regular, 20-week anatomy, all that. So,
Awesome. And was Jason, your partner, able to come into the 20-week ultrasound?
yes.
Okay. There's a lot of regulations at a lot of these hospitals because of COVID-19. So some people have not been able to go in for that. And that is like crazy town and hard and depending on what kind of news you get. So Jason, your son was looking great. I know this is really going to be difficult. So
Yeah.
Jason, your son was looking good at that 20-week anatomy scan, generally
Yes.
speaking. Okay. They didn't have anything. And were labs looking good too then? I'm
Yeah.
okay. Everything was
Yep.
good.
Everything. Our genetic screening, like through my OB,
Mm-hmm.
came back low risk for everything,
Awesome.
which was nice. The only thing that I was diagnosed with at the time with him was anterior placenta,
Okay.
which I don't like because you don't feel movement.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really able to judge movement because you don't feel nothing
Yeah.
until later down the line.
Right.
So
Which can
that's the
be
only other downfall.
Yeah, which can be kind of worrisome if you're like, oh, okay, how yeah. But then I'm sure your daughter, your earlier daughter you just barely had was not didn't have that issue. So you were very familiar with
No,
like, oh, okay. Yeah.
no, she was a posterior placenta.
Yeah. So she was
So
so you're like, I'm expecting more, but that would unnerve me as, yeah. Okay. So then, when did you guys find out that you're having a boy? Was it because of the genetic tests, or did you just
Mhm.
wait till the 20-week scan?
So we found out with the genetic test
Mm,
around 13 weeks because it takes about 2 weeks to come back. Mine
right.
took 7.5 days. I was
Nobody was
scrolling.
counting.
I was scrolling through LabCorp, guys. So I found out that way, but we had it confirmed through our 20-week anatomy scan
Okay.
because family becomes skeptical. I don't, but family became skeptical. They're like, "Are
Real?
you sure it's really a boy?"
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's
And then
funny.
I showed them the 20-week anatomy. I'm like, guys, it's definitely a
This right
boy.
here.
Do you see said parts? So, then they were like, now let's really get excited. I'm like,
Oh,
okay, cool, let's do this.
that's
So
that's so great.
yeah, it was fun to tell them that way too.
Yeah,
So
you're like, for reals, like legit.
yeah.
This is little boy coming. That's great. And did you guys have thoughts for a name yet? I mean, were you guys kind of starting to build a list or anything like that once you found out he was a boy?
No, I
Really?
was adamant. Yeah. No, we haven't because we thought we had time,
Yeah.
honestly. But I was adamant. I'm like, his middle name has to be Joseph. And he's like, why? I'm like, one of your middle names is that name, your dad's that name, your brother's that name, you know, my grandfather's name is
Oh,
that name. So it's really like a
yeah.
family tied
Mm-hmm.
name. And he's like, okay, we're gonna go with it.
Okay.
We'll figure out a first name closer to time.
Okay.
Didn't think we wouldn't have enough time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so 20-week anatomy scan's going good. You're probably just still, are you like at a month? Were they still month visits at the time after the 20-week
Yes.
anatomy scan? Okay. So tell me then how things proceeded, like from that point in time till the time that you found out.
And then go on with like the non-stress test and everything. So when she said, all right, let's hear this baby, I was like, all right, he's going to be difficult again. Normal. Like, he's like, yeah, she's like, he's probably going to want to be seen, not heard.
Yes,
I'm like,
exactly.
yep, routine. I'm like, we've been down this road already.
Oh wait, can I ask you a quick question? Were you by
Yes.
yourself? Was it just
Yes.
you?
Yes. It was just me.
Okay.
This is where it gets rough, guys. So she goes with the Doppler, can't pick it up. We've had the issue before. So she's like, all right, we're going to walk down to the ultrasound room. We had to wait because somebody was in there. She's like, just sit here. Once it's clear, we're going to clean it. We'll get you in. I'm like, all right, no problem. My doctor at the time, she said, I'm not good with these things. This is not my specialty with the ultrasounds and everything like that. She's like, just bear with me. And I said, okay, no problem. We see him on the screen, whole nine. And she's like, I'm not picking it up. I don't know why. I'm just not good at this. Let me bring in another doctor. Instantly, I started to feel like my heart was sinking because I'm like, if you have to bring in somebody else, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking of it just yet. I'm like, peace of mind, Laura, it's going to be okay. Larileah, calm down. It's going to be all right. Breathe. I'm like, all right. She brought her in. So now there's me and two other people in my room. She tries to pick up the heartbeat and she can't. And she's like, I'm not really good at this either. Let me go and get the head OB and let her come in and let her try. Maybe I'm not getting the right angle. Maybe he's in the wrong position. I'm like, okay. Still trying to, pep talk myself. Everything's going to be fine. They're just not, skilled in ultrasound because that's not their specialty.
Yeah.
The doctor, this head OB comes in and she's doing the thing and she's like tapping on my belly, try to get them to move to maybe it's wrong position. But it's when she changes the on the ultrasounds where they change it to where the blue and red come up for blood flow
Right.
is when we got our diagnosis. There was no cardiac activity. But she was a little insensitive with it. Instead of saying, I'm so sorry, your son is gone, she turns to the screen to me and says, do you see blood flow going to your baby? And I was like, no. She's like, well, your son's gone. Can I do measurements and give you your options, or do you need time to talk to your family? If you need time to talk to your family, you can call them. And I was like, are you serious?
So wait.
And she's like, yeah, we'll leave the room. You can call them and tell them everything that's going on. And I'm like, no, I'm talking to them to their faces. No. Like, no.
There was, okay, so were there the other OBs in there too, or is it just this head OB?
Nope, all three of them, including myself.
Oh, man.
Yep.
It's like never ceases to surprise me of how sometimes the medical community is extremely insensitive to this, you know?
Yeah. And the doctor that I was seeing, I'm not going to mention her name, she was a nurse practitioner. So after these two OBs leave the room, she hugs me and she's like, honey, I'm so sorry. And like, she starts to cry. And I'm like, it's okay. She's like, no, it's not. I'm like, it's going to have to be right now. And then they come back in, the one head, she comes back in to do the measurements. And then she's like, do you want to see? I was like, no, I don't want to see. And that's when I start to break down and I'm like hysterically crying in the office. And like, I'm telling her, I'm like, this isn't true. I mean, you're lying to me, right? She goes, no, he's really gone. Just like so passive with it. And it was like rubbing me the wrong way. And I'm like, I don't want to come back here. Or I just don't want to see you.
Yeah.
So she's like, well, here's your options. You can either have a dilation and evacuation, or you can opt to induce your labor. And I said, what exactly is a dilation and evacuation? Never heard of it before.
Yeah.
She's like, well, it's kind of like just having an abortion. I said, once I talk to my family, you can give me a call in a day or two. And I will probably opt for an inducement of labor because my son deserves a little bit more dignity than just being vacuumed out of my body. Are you sure you want to go for that? Like, yeah. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. All right, well, and then she was like going off with like her passive attitude and was like, oh, I'll just contact the hospital. I'll let them know that you'll be seeing them in the next few days. We'll see if they have an availability for you and this, that, and the third. But if anything changes, go straight to the emergency room if you're experiencing pain, bleeding, leaking of fluid, a fever, or cramping. Okay. So I got home. I went straight to my mom's. Correct. I got home.
Mm-hmm.
I told my kids to leave the room. I sat down and I broke down broke down to Jason.
Yeah.
And he's like, what's wrong? I said, he's gone. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, his heart stopped beating. He's not here. And I was still in that pregnancy mode days leading up to his birth, like sleeping only on my left side and taking my heartburn medicine. And, my body, was still registering pregnant, but in my mind, I knew I wasn't. So it was like, it was hurting me in the process. I mean, this is the first time I've seen this man cry since his mom being in the hospital. So it was tough to watch. And I told him, I was like, I have to go talk to my mom and my sister because they're my family besides my brother.
Right.
And I said, I have to let them know what's going on. And he's like, are you going to be strong enough to do this? I said, no, but I have to. I said, I don't want them to find out through Facebook. I don't want them to find out through a text message. I don't want them to find out from other family.
Yeah.
They need to hear it from me, face to face. Well, that was fun. Get to my mom's house. And she thinks I'm crying because me and Jason split.
Oh.
So she's not thinking that the appointment went wrong.
Yeah.
Even though I texted her and said, hey, I got to come over and talk to you guys once I get home. Don't ask if everything is okay, because she likes to ask if everything's okay. And if I don't answer, she likes to call me.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, we'll talk when you get in. Let me know how he's doing, this, that, and third. I'm like, okay, no problem. So it's just me and my mom. I sit down on the couch after, hysterical crying at her front door.
Oh.
And she says, what's going on? She's like, do I need to make room for you and the kids? Did you and Jason separate? I was like, no. Just let me collect myself and I will tell you what's going on. 15 minutes goes by and I still can't seem to say the words without crying. And she said, I'm like, sit down. I need you to sit. Like, you have to sit. So I grab her hands. I'm sitting there holding her hands. And I said, there's no heartbeat. She pulls away and says, you're kidding. You're lying. I'm like, no. Mom, he's gone. There's no heartbeat. And she's trying not to cry as I'm like flooded.
Yeah.
So she gets next to me on the couch and we just sit there in silence. And I just kept telling her, what did I do wrong? Instant thing is you blame yourself. Yeah. And she said nothing. And then my sister texts us. She's like, hey, I'm on my way home. I guess I'll see you when you come over. I said, I'm already here. I'll see you in about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing thinking of it. I'm sitting there. My mom still has me cuddled in her arm because I'm my mom's youngest child. So, her instinct is to let me cuddle my baby.
Yeah.
And I'm like sitting there. My sister's like, so what do you need to tell me? I'm like, thank you for sitting, but got to give me a minute. And she's sitting there silent. 30 minutes goes by. 30 minutes. I turn to my mom and say, I guess I have to rip off the Band-Aid, right? And she said, yes. I turned to her and I said, I'm sorry to let you know this, but your nephew passed away. And she's like, are you okay? I said, no. I said, I've never thought I'd be going through something like this. And she's like, I didn't want to say it. She's like, but I had a feeling when you said everything wasn't okay. But she thought maybe my labs weren't okay. Because, sometimes I told them, like, with my labs, I'm like, yeah, no, I'll tell you why things are not okay right now when I get home. And they're like, what's wrong? What's going on? Mm-hmm, I'm like, my labs are wrong. Like, this is up. Then I have to go in for this now. She thought at first my labs were wrong or like something was elevated, not thinking that her nephew was born.
Yeah.
We informed his mom. I informed his family, sadly through a message because I was out of work at the time. Mm-hmm. He was working and I wanted to tell them together. I wanted to tell them with us together.
Yeah.
But it was very hard to do. Unfortunately, his mom had to find out while she was at work.
Oh.
We had her inform the rest of his side of the family, but he's like, Mom, where are you at? Like, he called her and he's like, I need you to call me. Like, we need to talk today. And she's like, well, I'm at work. Is it urgent? He's like, yeah, but it can wait until you're home. No. She calls within a minute. He goes outside. At the time we were living in our apartment. He goes outside and he said it was probably the worst news he ever gave her because he's never heard her cry so bad.
Oh.
Yeah. And I didn't cry. I mean, after the initial appointment at 24 weeks, I became numb. Like, I was numb after that. I was kind of just like living my daily life, just doing day by day until the pain started to come in on the 30th. I was like, Jason, something's not right. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I've been having back pain. He's like, maybe you got to use the bathroom or, maybe you have to go take a walk. Maybe you slept wrong. I'm like, no, it's not the same.
That's different.
Yeah. He's like, okay, are you sure? I was like, yeah. And then the pain in my back started to go through low pelvic. And I'm like, we can't play around with this. Mm-hmm. This was on December 30th.
Okay.
5:30 at night. I go to the hospital. Hospital gives me a runaround. Oh, you're not supposed to be here. I'm like, yes, I am. No, you're only 24 weeks. Are you here because like you had a fall? I'm like, no, I have I have a 24-week loss. I'm having pain. I'm not trying to risk my life right now.
Right.
So I want to be checked. I was already a centimeter and a half dilated.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So my body really went into overdrive.
Yeah.
They didn't start because I opted for the induction.
Okay.
We didn't start that until roughly 7:20 to 7:30 p.m. the 30th.
Okay.
And he was born 7:21 on 12:31.
Oh.
Roughly 12 hours. It was quick.
Yeah.
It was very quick. There was no Pitocin, no epidural, even though I asked for one. And it was just using the pill they put at your cervix. Four doses, and boom.
They didn't offer you an epidural. You asked for it? Question mark. This is what?
It was too fast. I had to. It was around 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, 7:15 in the morning on the 31st.
Okay.
My contractions got worse when my bladder was full.
Oh.
So I called the nurse. I was like, "Hey, can you unhook me? I really feel like I need to use the bathroom." And she said, "Okay, no problem. We're doing a shift change. So the new nurse is going to come in with me, and we're going to be in there in a minute." Okay, no problem. The new nurse is introducing herself to me, who she is. Says, "If you need anything, call the nurse button." She's like, "I'll be in around 8 o'clock to check you to see how far you progress." Well, I'm like, all right. I went into the bathroom and I'm sitting there. I go to the bathroom. I'm like, okay, I feel so much better.
Mm-hmm.
The second I get up and I'm in the doorway of the bathroom, I'm getting this intense pain that won't quit. And I can feel something between my legs.
Oh.
Yes. At 7:21 in the morning, he was delivered in cold on the bathroom floor.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. That's what they were hoping for. They were hoping that everything came out at once, because they said if not, it would have resorted to having potential surgery, like
Right.
a DNC or whatever they were
Mm-hmm.
talking about. But no, everything intact, sac and all,
Oh.
placenta, all came out at one time. No pieces left behind. And she scooped him up, put him in the bathroom, taped one of those pads they have you sit on
Yep.
in front of the window,
Yep.
and shut the door. So that's what she did. And I'm just sitting there like, so what do we do now? Like, it's, I've never had a labor that fast before. I've never had it to deliver that fast before. So I'm like, what do we do? They're like, we're just going to make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they did not move me to the maternity ward.
Oh, yes.
They left me in my labor and delivery room.
Okay.
They did put me in the birthing suite, so it has like the tub and everything,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also a room that's off on its own.
Okay.
So I'm not hearing other babies crying,
Yeah.
which was really, 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 really nice of them,
Yeah, that was kind.
because I didn't want to. I told them, I'm like, if you move me upstairs, I'm self-discharging.
Yeah.
And they're like, no. You will be leaving from this room. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Good.
Because I was adamant. I'm like, if you put me upstairs, I don't want to be up there no more than an hour to 2 hours.
Good job,
Because
Larileah, for speaking up, because you need to
Yeah.
speak up in these situations. Yeah. Good job.
I just didn't want to be around hearing babies crying. Mind you, I had a monitor of everybody's heartbeat monitor.
Of course. Going off
Yeah.
and whatever. Yeah, that's annoying.
And I'm just like, every time I look up, I'm like, did it catch my contraction? Because you really can't catch them that early. It's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling them, but they're not getting them. I'm like, oh, we have to readjust. I'm like, no, you don't. It's happening right now. I can't breathe. So, I mean, I'm glad it was a quick labor. I'm very happy that they kept me in the one room.
Mm-hmm.
And the nurse did ask, she's like, do you want to see him? I'm like, yeah. I want to spend time with him. I need that for closure.
Yeah.
I need to register it that, I'm not coming home with you.
Yeah.
Sadly. Or more like the fact that you're not coming home with me
Mm-hmm.
in the same sense. And she's like, just keep in mind, he's not the size of a 24 weeker. And I'm like, no, I understand. We actually found out he passed at 22 weeks.
Oh.
So he was already gone 2
Oh.
weeks before my 24-week appointment.
So they just told you that just based on like how
His
he
size.
on his
Mhm.
size specifically. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
They told me between our 20th and our 24-week appointment, he passed within that time frame,
Mm-hmm.
and he was measuring a 22-weeker.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I was like, okay. And she's like, you probably wouldn't have known because your placenta
Was
masked everything.
yeah.
So I thought everything was fine. I was still dealing with the heavy sickness. Like I wasn't having, like none of my pregnancy symptoms disappeared. Not until the 24th week. That day, that's why I felt off on the 28th of December. Like I
Huh.
wasn't feeling like the breast soreness, and I wasn't really nauseous or anything. The heartburn completely went away. And I'm like,
That's weird.
something isn't right. Yeah. And
Huh.
like I had a feeling, but I didn't want to think it was real.
Yeah.
I was in a sense of denial for a minute. But I had him with me in my room from the minute they made him so-called presentable to me until I was discharged at like 12:30 in the afternoon.
Okay.
I did go against kind of sort of medical advice of not really, they let me go, but I told them it was supposed to be a 12-hour observation. So I
Mhm.
wasn't supposed to be going home until that night. But I told them I can't stay here any longer. I need to go home to my other children.
Yeah.
Like I need to be with my other children. And she's like, when would you want to leave? I said, now.
Like
She's like, well, can you leave in a half hour? We want to just run one last panel of blood work to make sure everything is coming out fine. And we just need you to fill out some paperwork. We need to know what funeral home you're using, or we're going to be using the one that the hospital is affiliated with. I was like, no, I have a funeral director.
Oh, good.
I said I talked to him yesterday, which wasn't fun in the slightest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, then we had a social worker call us. She asked if I wanted a priest to come.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I just want it to be us right now.
Yeah.
Like, can it just be us for right now? Unfortunately, Jason couldn't see him. He didn't want to see him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his own choice.
Yes.
And I completely respect that. I asked him if he wanted to hold him, and he's like, I can't do it. So I respect his decisions with that. I was like, can you take one picture with us? And he's like, I can do that. But he's like, I just can't. He's like, it hurts enough that he's not here.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want it to hurt even more having to hand him over.
Yeah.
He's like, it's bad enough you have to. I didn't want to. I wanted to take him home with me because that was mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I couldn't. Right at the point of discharge, the nurses were so nice enough to put a sign out on our door to like respect us, like when you come in, like if it's housekeeping or anything, to like don't say congratulations or anything like that.
Oh, good.
And before I was discharged, I was like, so can I walk out of here? She's like, no, we're going to treat you like every other mother, and we are going to wheel you downstairs in a wheelchair. I'm like, oh. She's like, you did go through birth. And then she presented me with a box. The box had all his stuff in it. Yeah. The hat he wore, the blanket he was wrapped in, all his identification tags. So it was like little hospital bracelets, a flash drive with his photos on it, because the nurse did take them for roughly an hour and took photos for me.
Oh, good. Was that something that you asked for, or was that something they just offered and you're like, yes? I mean, it's always one of those things where some people don't even think about it because they're just so shocked and numbed and have no clue what they're doing. And then others are like, yes, I'm planning on this. And what was your plan?
I asked her if she could. I was going to give her my phone and everything. And she's like, no, we'll take them with our camera and we'll give you a card. I was like, oh. She's like, do you want to do it in the room? I was like, no. Like, I didn't want to have to, and not that I didn't want to see everything.
Yes.
She's like, you know what? We're going to take them to another room and then we'll bring them back when we're done. Okay. I was like, okay. She brought him back and I'm like, oh, look, he looks different already. Because when he was born, he was really, swollen, puffy, how they all are when they're born.
For sure.
Even our living babies, they're all puffy and swollen when they're born.
Mm-hmm.
So when he thinned out, that's when I noticed his jawline the most.
Really?
And I smiled. And he's like, my partner, Jason, he's like, why are you smiling? And it was like a weird sense of like peace for a minute. And I was like, he was gonna look. I'm like, he would have looked just like you.
Yeah.
And he's like, how? I'm like, you guys have the same jawline.
Yeah. Can't
And
you
he's like,
see
are you
that?
serious? I'm like, yeah, you guys have the same jawline. And I'm like, he would have been a spitting image of you.
Oh.
And we couldn't tell with hair or anything because it was pretty early and whatnot. But big feet for a small baby.
Yeah.
Pretty decent sized hands. I'm like, oh, he would have definitely been 100% your twin. And he's like, man. I was
Oh.
like, yep. I said, but time got cut short. So he didn't weigh much, honestly.
Yeah,
He was only 10.3 ounces.
Oh yeah. So itty bitty.
Very tiny. We couldn't get a length because he was all curled up, fetal position. Like he had his hands across his chest, his feet crossed. So I don't know if they really wanted to do any type of maneuvering too much.
Yeah.
But he fit in the size of my hand.
Oh.
So he was, he had a little bit of a length going on there. So I would say about, maybe 10, 12 inches, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. The size of a ruler, let's just say.
Yeah.
But he was tiny. When he was first born, he felt heavier. But when she brought him back in afterwards, I was like, oh, he lightened up a lot.
Yeah.
But, I just couldn't stop staring at him. I just kept looking at him. I was talking to him. And he's like, my partner's like, I'm going to go downstairs. You sound crazy. I was like, this is what I did with Allison. This is what I did with Liliana. I'm going to do it with him. Just because he's not here, he's hearing me somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to talk to him. And I mean, I told him before I handed him over to the nurse or the doctor, whoever she was, for pathology, because we did opt for an autopsy because we did want answers.
Yeah.
We did want answers, which we didn't get any. Everything came back completely normal.
Really, with how he looked and also your placenta and everything else?
Yep.
Huh.
Yes. The placenta was normal for gestational week gestation.
Yeah.
For 24 weeks was the right weight. 3 artery umbilical cord. He was completely perfect. Nothing genetically wrong. They did do a genetic microarray, so they did it they went in deeper. Nothing
came up. Oh, that.
So they ruled it cord accident.
Really?
Yes.
Is there something that made them think that, like when he actually came out? That
his cord was wrapped around his neck a few times.
It was. Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
So they're saying since nothing came back genetically and nothing looked wrong elsewhere, like my placenta didn't fail or anything like that. There was nothing wrong with his cord in particular, like with the artery wise. So they just ruled it a cord accident because the cord was wrapped around his neck. But I'm like, all babies have the cord wrapped around them.
Yeah.
Some babies are born with them in their hands.
Yeah.
So I was still feeling defeated with not having any answers.
Yeah.
Hence why I reached out to you to make it known that sometimes you have a stillbirth with no answers.
Yeah.
And it will be okay at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So I do want to know, Larileah, though, when you guys decided to name him Jason, because you had on the radar. I mean, you said that your time was cut short in regards to being able to come up with a list or come up with some names. And so when did you guys decide on Jason?
So after he was born, I'm sitting there with him and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what he looks like. Because it's usually you set on a name after you see them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Jay, what does he look like? He's like, I'm not looking. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, we have to have a name. We have to have a name for the hospital. We have to have a name for a funeral director. We have to have a name for, a death certificate. We have to have this as a document. He can't just be known baby boy of Larileah and my last name, obviously. And he's like, okay. So he's like, I'm going to go downstairs for a minute. I'm like, okay. I'm going to go outside and get some air. Then I get a text message. Just name him after me. I said, are you sure? Are you 100% adamant and sure on a junior? He said, yes. What else do we have to do? I was like, okay. And we went with it. And I mean, it's fitting, but it's a very long name. But because I looked at him and I just knew he would be a twin of his dad. I was like, oh, we couldn't
Oh,
pick a better name. So
yeah,
we
seriously.
got this. So yeah.
That's awesome. So, and you felt like it was fitting too. You're like, yes, of course.
Yeah. Hmm.
That
Yeah, definitely.
that's great. While you were in the hospital, I know that so he was born around 7 in the morning, and you guys discharged around noonish, right? Afternoon.
Hmm.
And in that time, were you guys able to contact your mom, your sister? Like, were you keeping everybody apprised of what was happening, or were you just like, okay, this is something that we're dealing with on our own, and we'll talk with them when we get out?
I did keep everybody updated
Okay.
on both sides of the family. I didn't show any photos yet until I got home
Mm-hmm.
when I looked at the ones on the flash drive from the hospital.
Yeah.
I did tell them I did take like a few photos from my phone, and they're like, "Can I see?" I'm like, "I'm not ready to show anybody yet."
Okay.
But I did keep family informed. I was going to ask about visitor policy, but we're still kind of in that weird type of COVID, and I wasn't entirely sure if they would allow visitors or make an exception due to the circumstances.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm like, do I really need everybody coming here and then passing him around to everybody so they can like say hello and goodbye at the same time? Or do I just want my time?
Yeah.
I decided to be selfish and have my time. And I was like, everybody, I mean, I get it. Everybody else doesn't really get to see him, hold him, and the whole thing of that. But they respected my decision of it just being us. And I couldn't thank them anymore for that. I mean, after a while, months later, I did feel like I kind of regretted that decision. And maybe I should have had my family come and his family come, or did something else with like the funeral arrangements.
Yeah.
But I did everything that was in the best interest of myself at the time because I was not okay. Like every day felt like it was getting harder after the birth. So I made a lot of decisions to save my mental health and my sanity at that point.
Yes.
So I just had to do what was best for me at that moment and what was best for us as a family.
Which is good. I think, I mean, because it can break you. I like a loss like this is devastating, and yeah, it's so, so hard. Uh, so I know that you said that you contacted your funeral director already
Mm-hmm.
prior to even going into the hospital or even coming, having that pain that you felt
Mm-hmm.
that following day. Um, how was that? I, I hate saying that because it is like just the worst thing ever. Because you're like,
Yeah.
I am at a funeral home, like organizing the funeral or, whatever the services
Yeah.
for my son who's not made it. So how was that for
Yeah.
you? What did that
So
look like?
I know our funeral director, Brian, closely. He's done
Oh,
a lot with our family, so he's become a family friend.
oh, okay.
So I sent out
That's
a
great.
text message like, hey, when you get a chance, can you give me a call?
Yeah.
And then I didn't hear nothing from him for like a day or two. So I heard from him, don't remember what day it was. And he's like, hey, can I call you right now? He's like, I'm in my car. I'm on my way to let me not explain. I'm like, okay, yeah, you can give me a call. He's like, hey, what's up? I'm like, I need your services. And he's like, oh no, what happened? Is it your grandfather? My grandfather isn't doing well. That's another story.
Hmm.
Um, I'm like, no, it's not him. He's fine. I said, I need them for me personally. And he's like, well, how can I help you? This was like the day or so before I was going to deliver. I said, I just got the worst news of my life. He's like, oh, well, how's your pregnancy going? How's everything going? Because he's right down the street from me. I said, that's what I'm talking to you about. And he's like, oh, man. I said, we just got a diagnosis that my son has passed, and I need you to be the one to go get him.
Mm.
And he's like, do you really trust me like that? I'm like, yes, I do. I obviously was all in a joking manner.
Yes.
He's trying to uplift my spirits. And then I cried on the phone with him. I said, I just need to know he's in the best hands. and I couldn't trust anybody else more than I trust you.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, okay, I got you. I'm like, no problem. I said, can we meet at the funeral home and in your office, and let's talk about like what the numbers are going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I said, because I am opting for cremation. I really don't want a service. I just want to kind of get it done and over with at that point so I can start moving on with closure and grief and everything like that. And he's like, yeah, no problem, no problem. He's like, you know what? I'll do you a solid. I said, do you do this for everybody? He's like, in your circumstances, because your son has passed away. He's like, there is no charge to you. We will take care of everything.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's what made me break, because I'm thinking I now have to figure out, how am I going to pay for cremation? And
Yeah.
where am I going to, how am I going to, get an urn that's going to cost a lot of money?
Yep.
I never knew that they gifted me an urn.
Oh.
I purchased my own,
Oh.
which is blue. It's blue and silver,
Mm-hmm.
which is the urn is blue and silver. And I brought it with me to the funeral director, looked through to the funeral home, to the funeral director. And I said, hey, I brought my urn with me. He's like, oh. And he handed me this bag. And I'm like, okay, what's this? He's like, well, just open it first and then we'll make a decision. He's like, okay. I opened this box and it's a bronze heart.
Oh.
And what's inside, like the padding that's inside the box, is blue.
Oh.
I was like, oh crap. Okay. And he's like, well, do you want me to take his ashes and transfer them to your urn? Or would you like me to divide them? So you will have half of his ashes and his dad will have half of his ashes.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
Did you? Okay.
We divided them. So I told Jason, I said, the blue urn is yours
Mm-hmm.
and the heart is mine. And he's like, well, why is the heart yours? Why can't I have the heart? I'm like, because he was the first one that heard my heartbeat on the inside.
Mm.
So I was like, the heart is mine. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And I'm a funeral director. He's like, I'm so sorry you guys have to go through this. And I was like, I never thought I would have to, ever. And he's like, I know. He's like, and you just went through the tragedy of your grandmother not even a year ago. Yeah. I said, no, it was just a few months ago, Brian. Yeah. It was just a few months ago. And he's like, and you're hit double whammy. And he's like, and it's almost the new year. I said, I'm not looking forward to starting the year off feeling empty. And he's like, well, if you ever need anything, I'm here. He's like, my sister or sister-in-law, she does like bereavement, counseling classes or like meetings with parents that have lost children at Pennsylvania Hospital.
Oh,
where
that's
we
great.
Went. So I was like, yeah. He's like, let me know. I'll give you her number. Reach out to her. She could fit you in. I'm like, okay, no problem. Didn't do that. I should have, but I did not do that. But he didn't want to have that phone call with me as much as I didn't want to call him. And he said it kind of broke him right after he got off the phone with me. He's like, I didn't think I was picking up an infant. Mm-hmm. He's like, I didn't think I was going to that hospital and taking an infant to go get cremated. And I'm like, I didn't think I would be calling you to go pick up my infant. Yeah. That's where that happened. At that point, yeah.
That was so beautiful. I just can't. Yeah, I am so sorry. It's so. I'm sure it is still so hard and raw and difficult for you, and I'm so sorry. It's still so new for you. So also that is, I mean, that grief is still there, and it will always still be there, and it's just like, despite you having time, it's that he's with you, right? Like he's part of your family. He's part of who you are and your partner and who he is. And so I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
One last thing I wanted to ask you. What is something that you want to remember about him, about your little Jason, your Jason Jr., that you'd like us to know about him?
The one thing I will always remember about him is that, in a sense, don't take life for granted. He humbled me greatly. And his features, I can never forget his features to this day. Like, I don't know, I was just in awe of his face, his feet, his hands, but he humbled me. The whole experience humbled me. So that's one thing I will never forget that he's given me. I'm just, I cherish that every day for the last 8 to 9 months at this point.
That's beautiful. Larileah, thank you so much again for sharing us with us, Jason and his little story. We are so grateful that he was on this earth for a little while, and that you were willing to share his story. So thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.